Hey, my name's Jonathan, and I'm a veteran.
Hi, my name is Daryl, and I'm a veteran.
My name is Chad, and I'm a veteran.
Hey, I'm Travis. I'm an Air Force veteran.
Hi, my name's Ashley, and I'm a veteran.
Well, hello, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome to Conversations with a Vet, and I'm Carol Lee. So I have a great guest sitting in the wings, and we will get to him here shortly. A couple of things just want to talk about. We are nearing that 500 mark. When we hit that 500 subscriber mark, then we're going to be doing some giveaways. I have several autographed books written by veterans. They are behind me. Several of those will be given away when we hit that mark, as well as when we, once we surpass the 500 mark, then I'm going to be doing something. And I don't want to quite talk about what it is exactly, but after that, because, things do get a little spendy. So we want to kind of do a little thing. Anyway, so, Jason, thank you so much for being out in the chats. Appreciate you joining tonight. Always a great person, a great supporter. So thank you for that. And Jason is a father of 2 Marines as well. So that is my husband in the chat. So I know we're going to be getting some more. We've got 5 people out there watching right now. So feel free, whoever's watching, go ahead and comment in the chats. And also, for those who have not looked into and like to do overlanding, take a look out for, you can go out to Facebook, you can go out to, it's mindoverland.org. A great group of people. They serve veterans and they take veterans pretty much all expenses paid overlanding. And the majority of the time, it's on the East Coast. They take 15, no more generally, 6 times a year. Hopefully, they're hoping that because last Veterans Day, they weren't able to do their annual Veterans Day gathering, which includes not just the veterans, but the veterans' families, as well as supporters of veterans and media to come out. So they're hoping that come this November, that area that had been hit where they had it last time with Hurricane Helene in North Carolina is going to be up and running. So that is our hope, and we wish them well. So, but again, if you haven't checked them out, go out to mindoverland.org. A wonderful, wonderful group of people there. So, all right. So without further ado, please help me welcome Terry Hill. Hello there.
Hi, Carolee.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm really excited. This is my first time ever being on a podcast, so
look at that.
To share. Yeah, happy
I'm
to
really
share,
excited to have a conversation. It's always good to get veterans come on and tell their story, and it doesn't matter even if you were overseas or not, because really the majority were not, right? So I think only like 18% of our military has ever been deployed overseas. So, but
I want to say thank you to you before we even get started. This is something I'm sure a lot of veterans need. It's probably going to be really cathartic for me, but avenues like yours are really important to vets, especially ones who did deploy for whatever reason they had to go overseas, and even for veterans like you said that didn't deploy. But when you leave service, it can be different. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But thank you for what you're doing, creating this avenue.
Well, I appreciate it. And for those who don't know who are watching, and yourself as well. So I kind of started this for a selfish reason. We have 2 Marine veterans now. But before they became veterans, I knew as a mom, I was going to need to help them with resources. And that's where the idea came about. So, to me, I thought this would be kind of a benefit, not just for other veterans, right, to come in and tell their story, get it out there, but also for any veterans who are listening. They then can also watch and, maybe find resources that they haven't tried yet. So I think it was kind of a win-win. But initially, yeah, I started it as a just to kind of help my kids. So, and I'm really glad I did, because the network of veterans that I've been able to um, become part of, has been absolutely amazing. And, for both my boys. So I'm really thrilled to do it, and really thank you for the kind words.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, it's an outstanding resource. Either to be on, to be able to watch, because you might get something that as a resource you didn't know that was there. So yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm having like this terrible hot flash. My glasses are like fogging up. This who knew it was so warm down in the dungeon down here. Ron Wayne, welcome. So Jason says, Terry, thank you for your service. Hoorah. As I
Ra.
said, he is a father of 2 Marines. I am a mother of 2 Marines. Ron Wayne, he says, Terry, hello there. Good to have you joining us tonight, Ron.
Hey, Ron.
Okay, so I'm going to start off by what I always ask, and that is, could you please tell everybody a little bit about who Terry Hill was as a child?
Ooh, I'll say my dad used to call me diesel fuel. So I guess that means I had a lot of energy and was running through everything like a truck.
Yeah, I would guess so. Woo.
But yeah, I grew up up north. I'm originally from Brooklyn. Then I moved down to Georgia when my parents moved back down to the South. But yeah, I guess most people that grew up in Atlanta are transplants. So I'm an Atlanta transplant. And yeah, I went to school in East Point, moved to the southwest part of Atlanta where I grew up mostly, attended Westlake High School. So any football fans out there were Cam Newton went to high school.
Are you a big football fan?
I am a huge football fan. My wife might say that I like football too much because I'm either watching it or playing it online. So,
do you have a favorite team? I'm sure you do.
Yeah, I'm a hometowner, so Atlanta Falcons all the way. My college team, UGA, so go Dogs.
There you go.
We got a house divided. My wife's an Alabama fan, so during the football season,
I can only imagine how that goes, right?
Yeah, a lot of side eyes going on, especially whenever we have to play each other.
So what was it like for you for school? Like, what was your education like?
Pretty typical. I really drew or gravitated to the sciences. So physics, chemistry, physical sciences were really subjects that I enjoyed. But I really didn't know kind of growing up what I wanted to be. I'm a huge James Bond fan. So all things spy or
nice
action is kind of where I gravitated growing up. And having moved down from the north, I wasn't really sure what life was going to be like down here in Georgia. And so,
how old were you when you moved?
I was about 6, so really young still. But growing up, partially where I could just take the bus or the train anywhere to somewhere you have to be in a car was really strange for me, and still strange for me. I don't like driving. I'd rather just hop on the metro or hop a bus and go somewhere. So that was different growing up. But I tell my kids now I would just get on my bike and I would ride everywhere. So I'd ride from my house out in the suburbs to downtown Atlanta and just be out roaming the streets all day long on my bike. And then I got into music. So I joined the band. Took a break because I school I went to, playing the flute wasn't cool. And so
Okay, so that was my next question. You played the flute. Do you
I
still
played.
play?
I do not. I would
Yeah.
like to. My oldest daughter plays the clarinet, so we're cultivating that in the house. So she'll be she. I'm hoping she'll be a band geek, but she's now in the cheerleading, so probably
Okay.
have a cheerleader growing around here pretty soon. But yeah, dealing with that as a father has been eye opening for me.
Yes, I can imagine for sure. Um, okay, so sports, did you play sports in high school?
No, I'm not tall, so once I got to high school, sports kind of was like, yeah, that's cool to watch. I love basketball. I like watching football, but I love playing basketball. So we have a court near our house. I take the kids out and we'll go play basketball, hoop it up a little
Nice.
bit. I'm hoping
So
hoping Duke pulls it off here. They're my
Duke
college
fan.
basketball team. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Um, so I guess were you studious at all? Did you like school?
I did, but I preferred I guess I preferred getting the assignment and the teacher just kind of leaving me to my own devices. I'm not really one for sitting and doing a lot of work. I like to give me whatever the job is and then let me get it done however I can get it done. So I was pretty studious. By the time I got to my senior year, I could have graduated early. But
Wow.
my guidance counselor though, she had a caveat for everyone that was in our class under her that we all had to take a finance and economics course before you could graduate. And so
Okay.
they didn't offer it until your senior year, and they staggered it between the first and second semesters. So she was very involved with making sure everyone that came during her time graduated. So yeah,
Well,
I
that's
had to
good.
wait. Yeah, no, I appreciated her so much, especially now in my adult life, having had that finance and economics class coming out of high school, going into college.
Yeah.
But yeah, she was very just involved with us, making sure that we had everything we needed, any resources that she could help us with as we prepared to graduate. And so, yeah, I graduated from Westlake High School back in 2000. And then I went to the University of West Georgia out in Carrollton, Georgia,
So you
where,
went right from high school into college.
yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
at that point, again, my only thoughts about the military were, oh, that looks pretty cool on TV or in a movie.
Back then, I mean, they did have some really good commercials.
They did. So when I eventually joined the Marine Corps, I asked, "Where's the dragon that I could slay from the commercials?" And no one
Yeah.
could tell me
Yeah.
where it was.
No.
Um, I
So,
was
okay. How were you with college then? Still the same studious individual?
I was not. I got to
No?
college, and the level of responsibility or level of being a responsible person I thought I was went out the window. Uh, my parents never really had to tell me to do homework, and so they kind of just left me to my own devices. But that didn't really fly in college, and so leaving me to my own devices and not having someone to kind of look after me and tell me, well, you kind of need to go to class. And also college is just really different for me. I wasn't so concerned about my social life in high school. I was in the band. I had a job in high school. I did Taekwondo in high school. But when I got
Oh,
to
wow.
college, yeah, I got to college and lived on campus, and I discovered parties. And so I spent my first 2 years not going to class as much as I should have, to the point where I got put on academic probation and lost my scholarship.
Oh,
So
no.
yeah.
Ah, goodness. What did your parents say? Since obviously you weren't living at home by then.
Yeah, my mom and my dad had to come to Jesus with me, and they
Uh,
said, "We're gonna give you 1 semester on us. You will pay us back." I said, "Oh, but your mom and dad," and they were like, "Yeah, you're gonna pay us back because you're an adult. You didn't do what you were supposed to do, so you're gonna get 1 semester on us, and then if you want to go to college, You're going to figure it out or you're going to get a job. So I got a student loan, eventually got my scholarship back, and I graduated with a degree in criminology and a minor.
Wow, that sounds like it's right up your alley too, since you liked the detective stuff and, James Bond.
It was, and that's kind of where I started to progress and thinking about the military, kind of what the catalyst was for me joining the Marine Corps. I think back to high school, I was supposed to take the ASVAB then, and I kind of ducked the recruiters when they came to the school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I initially met with someone from the Army when I was in high school, and they said, yeah, we'll be here. You come take the ASVAB, and we'll see what your scores are, and we'll get you all signed up. And the day they came, I ducked them, and they came back the next day, and the recruiter said, where were you? And I was like, my parents said I couldn't join the military. And he was like, yeah, sure. So ASVAB,
where you were at, was not something that you were required to take?
No.
Wow. I remember for myself, now again, this is eons ago, but that was something we all had to, like everybody had to sit. We were in the lunchroom. Everybody had their ASVAB in front of them, and you sat and took it. And then the results, of course, went out to all of the military branches. So, so that's a little different for me to hear. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I was nervous because you got to do the selective service and all that, and so I was like, man, I don't want to take this test, and then something happens and I actually have to go. And
yeah, Jason said he had to take it in his high school too, and I believe my youngest Marine middle son also had to take it. In fact, I think my youngest son had to take it too. Come to think of it,
no, we didn't have to take it when the high school I went to. So that's really interesting.
Yeah,
but yeah, I get to college and again see recruiters on campus, and so I graduated high school in 2000. We had 9/11 happened, and so we had more recruiters coming to campus. And this time I met a Marine recruiter, and he told me, you're in college, so you can go to OCS. And I thought, well, maybe that I'd heard about the Marines and saw the cool commercials and thought, okay, cool, I'll think about it.
Slay that dragon.
Yeah, I could slay that dragon. And the blues are like the best uniform.
Agreed.
Visually, to wear them, it's
miserable.
Painful. Yeah, it is a miserable experience to have to actually wear them.
But I'll tell you, it is so worth it just when people look at you. Like those blues really command respect.
They do.
100%.
They do.
And again, I guess I can say that I'm a little biased. So
it doesn't. Nothing wrong with that. Marine Corps all day.
There you go. So when 9/11 hit and you were in college, at that point, did you even have an inkling of thought to join in the military?
For me, it was always kind of like an admiration from afar. I thought it was something cool to just, people do that. That seems like it's a good, like a awesome thing. I'd seen like Black Hawk Down and other military movies, and like, oh man, that seems cool to you get to carry a gun, or you get to go jump out of planes and, do all the secret cool stuff. But I think for me, it was more so that looks great on screen. I don't know if I could do that for real.
Got it.
And so I dodged that recruiter too, who came on campus shortly after 9/11. And I remember exactly where I was when 9/11 happened. I was coming home from spending the night at my parents' house. I had gotten gas when everything started to happen on my way back to campus. And they shut campus down. We had one class that day, and they closed campus down. And everyone was just watching everything in the dorms. And after that, like again, the recruiters were coming on campus and were telling me about OCS and saying that you could make a difference and do all these things where you can make a difference and serve your country. And I was like, yeah, that sounds cool, but I don't. Again, it was just kind of, yeah, that looks cool on screen, but I wasn't really sure I really wanted to go forward with my service at that time.
Right. So, okay. So you graduated college then, and when you decided you wanted to join after talking to a Marine Corps recruiter?
Yeah, the recruiter I met in college, he just kind of put it on my radar when I graduated. I was looking for a job with law enforcement, and so I had applied to be a Fulton County police officer. Took the written exam, went through everything, my physical, psych exam, and then I got a letter saying that we appreciate you applying and everything. At this time, we're going to move in another direction because I didn't have enough experience.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and I was really curious. It was like, how do I get experience for your entry level position? And so by this time it was 2004, almost 2005 when I graduated college, and I started to rethink what I was going to actually do with my professional career, and was a little disheartened. I thought I wanted to be in law enforcement, and so I figured my stepping stone would be local law enforcement. Eventually, I wanted to go federal, one of the special services, FBI, DEA, CIA, somewhere along those lines. But to get turned down for local law enforcement was a bit disheartening. And so I figured at this point I've got nothing to lose. Maybe I should join the military maybe I can get the experience there. And so that's when I went and sought out a recruiter at that point. Okay.
Hey, we've got the Bear 501. Thank you for coming out tonight and jumping on the chats. And they say, thank you, Terry. So feel free to comment as we go along out there, if you're out there in the chats. Love to hear from you and get the chats moving. So Terry, you go and you find a Marine recruiter first at that point?
Yeah, I was still doing Taekwondo, and my instructor was in the Marine Corps. He left as a sergeant. I was a Vietnam veteran, and ironically, I ran it by him and my parents. And my parents said, "We don't really think you're that guy."
That was my next question. So this is before, though, but you didn't just arbitrarily go and sign and then tell your parents after the fact.
No, I had the conversation with them and just kind of floated the idea to them just to see what they would think, and explained like, hey, I've got my degree, but I don't have a job. I really want to do something in law enforcement, but I can't get the basic entry position. So I got to get some skills that's going to make me look good. Right. And, they said, well, maybe not. We don't know if really you're that guy. And so I went to my mentor, my Taekwondo instructor, Isaac Thomas, and he didn't say the same thing. He asked me if I was sure this was something I wanted to do. And that gave me pause, because my mentor, I'm thinking, oh yeah, he'd tell me just go for it. But he questioned me and why I was doing it, and said that, it's not something you have to do. There are a lot of other ways to get experience or to find a career. And so had that conversation. Then I went and found the recruiter near me. It was a gunnery sergeant, and he asked why I really wanted to do it. And I told him the same thing. I was looking for experience, and he's like, well, we'll see. We'll see what you got. And
do you think your height had anything to do with it?
I think for me, there was some hesitation in my reason why I wanted to join.
Okay. All right.
And I think he saw that from just our initial like interview little chat that we had. And I think that's what people saw, is that I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think they thought during that period of time, there's a very real chance you were going to deploy. And so I think, the people in my life were just kind of, getting a job during a time of warfare is probably, one thing, but committing yourself to the military during this period of time, you're probably signing yourself up for something you don't know what you're doing it right now. And so I think that's what everyone was trying to get at
because your answers weren't very decisive, right?
Yeah, I wasn't really gung-ho. I was like, well, I don't think I have any other options. And that wasn't like the best answer to give everyone at that time.
Yeah. So your folks, did they try and talk you out of it then at that point?
Not really. They my mom, she's like a quiet warrior. So she's really reserved. She said, you're an adult, make decisions, we'll be there to try to support you. My dad was more so like, well, you're a man. So again, you're going to make your own decisions, but just know what you're getting into. Told that to my recruiter. And he said he would talk to my parents. And I thought that's probably not a good idea.
That's funny.
But he called him. It was a really quick conversation. I'm still not sure what exactly he said to them, but they supported me anyway, and so I got the process started in February 2006. Nice.
So you had to take the military's version of the ASVAB.
Yeah. And
how'd that go for you?
So ironically, I took the practice ASVAB and I scored really low. Like I don't do standardized tests well. Okay. I think I got just above whatever the minimum score is. Simplify, Jason.
Jason, welcome, friend.
But yeah, I got the minimum, right above the minimum score. And my recruiter, Gunny Hale, was his name, and he said, "Yeah, you need to go get one of those ASVAB for Dummies books and do some standard."
That's so funny.
Yeah, I went to Barnes and Nobles and I bought the ASVAB for Dummies book, and I did a little bit of studying. He said, we'll give you a couple of weeks, study up. You're gonna go take the real test, and whatever you get, that's what's going to determine, what options you have.
Right.
In terms of MOS.
And I can only imagine you were pretty nervous because the practice, I think, how long did they give you for the practice exam? Or did they say it was pretty much all day, 24 hours?
For the practice, I think I wasn't there very long. It wasn't very long at all.
And when you got to and sat down to do the real ASVAB for them, how was that? Like,
that was nerve-wracking. So for me,
you'd already studied, which was more than what you had done last time, yeah?
Yeah. So for me, it was kind of all in one day. So I took the ASVAB and I went to MEPS. So I did all my medical in the very same day.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I had essentially signed most of my paperwork for my contract. And the only MOSs that were available, that's what they told me.
Right. For their quotas. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know. It's like, we want to kind of move people towards these. We got some billets we need to fill for these.
And what MOSs did they give you?
So it was radio operator, ammo tech, and motor T.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Those are the three options. The only three options I thought I had.
Which is interesting that they did not throw infantry in there.
So yeah, you still had to sign, I think, the paper if you wanted to divert and go into infantry at that time.
Into the 0311. I don't know
Yeah.
if it was 0311 at that time, but yeah.
Yeah, 0311.
Was it still? Because I know that they changed that stuff around. So,
yeah, infantry was still the 03 base set then.
okay.
So I was like, man, I know I'm already going into the Marine Corps. I don't know. For me, because I was going after graduating college, and again, my initial reason for wanting to join was career. So I was also thinking, what's life going to be like post-military?
Which is not a bad thing, right? Thinking ahead and planning.
Yeah. And so I thought, yeah, infantry would be cool, but I don't know how those skills are going to transfer to life after the Marine Corps. However, because for me, I was initially just going to do my one contract and get out. Right, I wasn't really planning, and so I looked at those MOSs, and we also had the conversation with my recruiter that you're not guaranteed your MOS if you go active. It's just whatever the fleet needs, and so I opted to go into the reserves. And so they were like, reserves, each reserve unit has so many spots they need to fill for MOSs. If you want to be whatever, you can sign your contract. We'll send you to the reserves. You'll be guaranteed your MOS, but you have to sign a waiver depending on how far the nearest Marine Corps unit is from your home of record.
Okay.
So yeah,
and you've got all of that done. You picked your MOS, which was
0621. So I was a radio operator.
Okay. Excellent. And then, so you've got all of that, and now they send you off to boot camp.
Yeah. So took the ASVAB, MEPS, got a high enough score to get a top secret or a secret security clearance. So it was good that I picked radio operator. So make good use of my security clearance there.
Yes. Yes.
And then, I went to boot camp, and it was eye-opening for me.
Well, before we jump into that, I have the question. I'm assuming you took a bus there?
I did.
Okay.
I did.
A bus pulls up. Does the drill sergeant hop on board?
When we got there, yeah.
Yep. Okay. Was that the first time you had to deal with somebody screaming and yelling at you?
Yes. So that was really different. So like my recruiter, we had that talk before, and before we even left for boot camp, they put you up in a hotel the night before, so you spend the night in a hotel. And ironically, I was rooming with the guy who was going into the Air Force, and I didn't know you up until you actually arrive, you could leave. I mean, it'd be an admin SEP in terms of how that looks on your record.
Right.
But my roommate was talking to his girlfriend, and he said, well, I'm not doing this. And he left in the middle of the night.
Wow. What year was that you were?
2006.
2006. Okay. I know, well, the Marine Corps nowadays anyway, very strict. So you don't even, you get to have your phone, but you basically, once you get to the hotel, like they take it.
Yeah, I got to keep my phone right up until we got off the bus. So you're on the bus, you cross over into Parris Island. So I'm a Parris Island Marine. I'm not a Hollywood Marine.
Nice.
From my
Very
San Diego,
nice.
my San Diego Marines out there.
Yep.
So yeah, we get to Parris Island. Drill instructor comes on the bus, talks to the bus driver. He walks off the bus. Another drill instructor comes on, starts yelling at everyone. Then he gets off the bus, and then I guess they talk, and then the typical, you see everyone scrambling to jump out the windows and out the front and the back of the bus. And went and got on the yellow footprints.
With those yellow footprints, you step on those. what's going through your mind, knowing the people that have stood on those before you?
At that point, it was night for us. And so I was like, what did I agree to? Why did I make this decision? Before I even got there, my recruiter, Gunny Hale, he told me your fastest way off Parris Island is to graduate. Mm-hmm. And he said, so whatever you got to do, graduate on time. That's your fastest way. I think for me, I didn't really think about that when I was on the footprints. It was just, I'm a grown man and I'm letting other grown men yell at me like I'm a child.
Yes. Now, were you one of the older ones there?
I was.
Okay. Yeah.
So I had already graduated college and I was 24, I believe at the time. And they get off the yellow footprints, you get to walk through the portholes to intake. And then for us at that point, during that period of time, they take you to like 2 classrooms. You sit down and then they tell you to get rid of all your contraband. And so if you had anything in your pockets, I had my cell phone. That was about all I had with me. You put everything in a little bag, and then you go make your phone call to let someone know that you got there.
How was that?
Stressful. It was late on a Sunday night when I got there, and my mom was at Bible study. Oh. And so no one was home, and I couldn't remember her cell phone number. And so you open like the little phone thing, and there's a script for you to read. And so I'm dialing numbers. I'm dialing, my parents' home number. They're not there. I try to remember my mom's cell phone number. My girlfriend at the time, I just happened to remember her number. And she didn't pick up. And so I look confused because I don't know what to do. Drill instructor comes around and he's like knife handed me in the face. He's like, hurry up. I'm like, sir, he's like, I'm not a sir, I'm enlisted. I'm like, I don't know what that means. And he's like, make your phone call. And I'm like, no one's answering. And he just says, find someone. And so fortunately, my girlfriend at the time picked up and I read my little script and I hung up. And that was the last time I talked to anyone until family day.
Interestingly enough, I waited and waited and waited for my son to get that phone call. And other parents, so of course now we're, Facebook and such. So they tell you nowadays when they ship, the day they ship, everybody meets at the recruiter's office and the recruiter talks to the parents and says, hey, here's a Facebook group. The parents are going to want to join and stuff. So, all of us parents are going, we haven't heard from our kid yet. And then all of a sudden, slowly you'd start hearing, yeah, my son called and oh my gosh, it was just so rushed and there was so much screaming in the background. And I'm like waiting and nothing. I got no phone call whatsoever. And then had to wait until we could actually, start sending and receiving letters. But it wasn't until he graduated and he came home for his 10-day leave that found out he had a phone that was disconnected. And so he would pick it up, dial the number, and of course there's nothing, like no dial tone or anything. And then he'd hang up. Sir, nobody's answering or whatever, nobody's answering. And he'd try again. So, but he never told him it wasn't working. So, yeah. And after, I think that they made him do it like 3 different times. And finally they're like, whoop, that's it. You're done. You're out. But I was scared to death.
Yeah, that was a stressful phone call. And again, I think they undersold the amount of yelling that goes on. And I was not prepared. Again, I'm 24 at the time, and so I'm just thinking, I'm looking at the drill instructor. Why are you yelling? I'm trying.
you're an adult, right? You've earned your
Yeah,
way
I'm an
through life.
adult.
And now all of a sudden, this is what happens. So, yeah, quite interesting. So, all right. So you get through your phone call, you go through receiving, you get
Mhm.
your uniform, all of that.
Yep. So we go through intake, go to SIF, get all our gear, and I you hear through the grapevine for people that are like in holding platoons. You don't want to get stuck in a holding platoon. You want to make
Right.
sure you can stay on track for your graduation. And I was like, I don't know what a holding platoon is. I don't even know what a platoon is. What are you talking? What's a platoon? It's like you don't want to get sick or broken or anything like that. Just stay with wherever your platoon, whatever platoon you form with. That's who you want to stay with. And so you hear those
Right.
things, and we get introduced to our drill instructors, and we go through the whole, formal introduction, and they march in and they introduce themselves, and our senior drill instructor, he's like, I'm your daddy for the next 13 weeks. I don't know what that means. And, your commander, walks in, and, your senior drill instructor receives a platoon, and you find out who your drill hat and your kill hat are. And it was just really jarring for me. And all I remember though I could think about is graduate. You just got to graduate.
Right. That's right. And how difficult was it for you to not be able to talk to anybody for that period of time during your boot camp? I mean, as far as family and friends and like your girlfriend, etc.
Yeah, that was really challenging. I know, like you said, now it's a little different. They can take a phone, or you have some ability to communicate.
Not the Marine Corps only you can eventually start after, I think it's after the first phase, where then they'll let you start actually sending letters back and forth, but they don't get their phone at all. Like the only time they outside of their initial call home is if maybe possibly they do something well. And as a reward,
that.
they might let one or two call home. Or if they got injured, then they'd get to call home to say, "Hey, I'm in medical. This happened." Or like the only other time outside of those two instances are would be what is it? Parents' Day, I guess. Well, maybe the day you get your EGA.
Yeah. So it was really challenging. I'd heard that they were loosening restrictions, so that's good that they're still keeping it pretty strict.
Yeah. Now Army, I know they get to take their cell phones with them, and they get to talk like every Sunday on them for an hour or something like that. I was like, really?
Okay.
I thought it would be the same from branch to branch, but it is not.
No, I'm glad it's the Marines. We have a very specific purpose, and so I'm glad they keep some of that tradition and history there. But not having the ability to talk to anyone from home was jarring. It was confusing because you're going through being essentially broken down, and then rebuilt. And so I was in 3rd Battalion, Kilo Company.
Okay.
And so I don't know if Parris Island is still structured the way it is, but Kilo Company and 3rd Battalion in general was off from the other battalions. So 1st and 2nd Battalion are pretty close to each other. 4th Battalion, the all-female battalion, was similarly relatively close, but 3rd Battalion was way off in nowhere. And so there was a saying that 3rd Battalion doesn't make Marines, they make machines. And
okay, all right.
And in that, Kilo Company was even harder. And so the motto, or I guess a little saying, or the internal, was that no one can use scream out in 3rd Battalion.
That's
And,
funny.
yeah, so there a lot of trips to the sand pit.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I got to fill my pockets with a lot of sand very often,
Wow.
especially because I
So
was older.
yes. Yeah, I was going to ask. So being older, I'm going to make the assumption that you got a lot of attention from the drill instructors.
I did. I had a lot of questions about why are you even here?
Yes.
Like, were you not good enough to go to OCS? Which I did go to OCS later on for a little while before I deployed, but I was I was made the scribe, so I was a platoon scribe because
Okay.
going to college means you can write. So
Yeah, yeah. You can speak well and you can write. That's the
so I could
general
write. So
consensus.
I was a scribe, so got a little bit of favoritism there. But one of my drill instructors' last name was Hill, so that did not help.
Yeah.
So instead of being recruit Hill for my 13 weeks, I was just recruit for my 13 weeks there.
I think maybe it was bringing back bad memories for him.
It was well, everyone would dig at him and say, is that your son? And he wasn't very much older than me. So
Oh, funny. That's funny.
yeah, I was recruit. So as a scribe, it's hey, recruit, come here. And you're talking third person, so this recruit all for everything you do. And it took me a minute because I was still calling people sir. My parents raised me to be really respectful. And so I was always saying sir until I realized drill instructor was how you address everyone. But I remember one time we were in the chow hall, and my drill instructor, he was Sergeant Hill. He was a sergeant. I guess he was flirting, or him and one of the ladies in the chow hall were just talking, and she saw my name tape and she was like, "Oh, Hill." She's like, "Are y'all related?" And he cuts his eyes to me and he says, "I don't know. Recruit. Are we related?" And I was just thinking, man, why did she have to say that? Why? And so I just said, no, drill. I was like, no, this recruit is not related to the drill instructor. She's like, but y'all look alike. I'm like, you're making this situation way worse, ma'am. Can you please stop? And so that brought on a trip to the sand pit. I don't know why. He's like, oh, he thought that was funny. Let's go to the sand. Yeah. So I got some extra attention that day.
So you were a scribe, and let's talk about actually going through the phases. First off, so every Marine is a rifleman.
Right.
And had you ever used a firearm?
I'd never fired a weapon ever.
Ever.
Unless you count Nintendo. That was the only that was the extent of my weapons training.
So, all right. So what did you think when it came? I mean, obviously that's a few phases down, but knowing that was something that you were going to have to learn how to do.
It was really it was a little bit of anxiety there because again, I'm thinking got to graduate, right? And you hear if you you could maybe get a redo if it's somewhere in the schedule, free to requal for anything. But my drill instructors, so my senior drill instructor was in LAR, so light armored reconnaissance. And so he was very proficient. And so he would have us breaking down weapons and dry firing in the squad bay all the time. And so I got to be more familiar with my M16. But when we actually get to the range, and on the range, you're they're not allowed to scream at you when you're actually on the range. And so my our PMI, our professional marksmanship instructors, they're really cool. They really honed in on us about safety. And so by that time, I felt comfortable holding a weapon, holding my rifle, but still just wasn't sure about shooting. And so when I got to actually have to qual, I almost unked or, didn't qualify. I was a pizza box out of boot camp. So yeah, barely passed. I think I don't remember what the bottom, score was, but I was like 3 points above qualification.
Oh, wow. But you did, you passed.
But I did.
And that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
So, okay. So there were different phases now and different things that you had to learn and do. And Paris Island, I'm a little bit more familiar with than San Diego, of course, because that's where my youngest Marine went as well. So, and he had two favorite things during boot camp. And I'm curious to know your thoughts on the gas chamber and rappelling.
So I love those. The gas chamber was fun. It's weird. Everyone.
Yeah. That's what my son said too. I was like, how? Oh, you come out with snot running down your face.
Yeah, that's not filling up in your gas mask, and you're standing in a small little concrete room there, and then you're running out, and some people are vomiting, and other people are just snot pouring out of everywhere. I don't know. That was fun. And rappelling was cool too. For me, my favorite was, so you don't have to go to a service on Sunday, but they afford everyone the opportunity to go wherever. That was mine because you could nod off if you didn't get caught. Yeah. And so that was a time for me to get extra sleep.
Okay. I think a lot of people found religion in the Marine Corps so they could go, off. So
I didn't want to stay in the squad bay with the drill instructor because that was their time to not have to see you. And if you stayed back, you ended up having to clean the squad bay ahead of when you got back. Everyone else got back, and we were going to clean it Sunday anyway. So yeah, that was my favorite. And then the other time, swim qual, only because I learned a really valuable lesson. So I actually I DQ'd. I didn't qualify on my first attempt through swim qual. I missed my swim at the end. So you jump off the board, you have to tread water, and then you do your short swim. And I missed by 3 feet. And you're not in the middle of the pool, right? You're able to swim pretty close to the edge of the pool, and you've got the instructors in there with you. But I started to go under about 3 feet from the end of the swim, and the combat water instructor, he's like, dude, I wasn't going to let you drown. He's like, you could have made it. But my kill hat just happened to be with us there that day. And he said, you're going to let 3 feet break you or determine what happens to you in life. And that, for whatever reason, that resonated with me. It's like, don't ever let 3 feet stop you from doing or accomplishing what you want to accomplish in life. And so my motto for whenever I have a hardship has always been 3 feet.
That's awesome.
So for me, so I didn't necessarily like the water. I couldn't really swim well, and it's like, you join the Marine Corps, you can't swim well at all. But that swim qual was my favorite because that's been a life lesson for me since then.
Oh, that's great. So did they let you redo it then, or did you have to wait?
I did. Fortunately, there was another group. We had enough people that didn't qualify that first time around. And there was a platoon that was right behind us that during team week, I got to go back and I got to try to qualify, and I qualified right away that first retry.
Excellent. And I bet it was just such a feeling of accomplishment, right? To kind of
Yeah, it was,
overcome those fears and just push yourself a little bit more.
yeah, it was a relief. I didn't really need much more time in the water. That second time around, I was really determined to not fail ever again in boot camp. By that time, I had learned also that you got to live from like chow to chow. And so I got into a good rhythm of, all right, we got breakfast chow, we got noon chow, we got dinner chow. If you work and you just keep that pace, 13 weeks goes by pretty fast.
Wonderful. So you get all the way through the phases. The last thing on your checklist to graduate is the crucible. So tell me how it went for you. What was the day like, or the morning? I mean, etc.
Yeah, so everyone hears about the crucible, the 72 hours that you're going to be out there, and so you don't realize how close it actually is. They march you around everywhere, and you think it's a lot further than it is, and you have the old airfields that are out there on Paris
Is it like
Island.
12 miles or something like that?
Yeah, the total but it's really, you're just marching around different places, and it's way closer than you end up actually marching out
That's
there.
funny.
But yeah, you end up getting out there and you start, and you're shaving and in the dark, and you're going red light for light discipline, and then you're going through the different scenarios, practicing contact, movement to contact, and you're for one of I remember clearly one of our first one, our company commander just happened to be observing, and I was running through the woods, and I was supposed to go over an obstacle low, and I guess I had my head a little too high, and he made me go back and do it 3 times.
Oh, geez.
And it's one of those moments where, again, I was just like, you're not much older than me. Why are you making this so hard?
But there's a reason, right?
But there's a reason. There is a reason. And I didn't appreciate that until after I got out of boot camp. And but yeah, the crucible, I think back now and at this part of my life, and for me, joining the Marine Corps, the crucible was my rite of passage into manhood. So I was 24 at that point, but I never had an actual ritual. I think back through history where we have rituals that, for girls, sometimes it's that Sweet 16 or quinceañeras, or just an actual point in your life where it says, I'm no longer a child, I'm stepping into adulthood. For me, the joining the Marine Corps and the crucible was my ritual that says, oh, I'm a man. Like, I'm already a man, right, but I've gone through something that has tested me. So that was really, really fun, fond memories now. And then you get
right. It's always looking back, hindsight and all that good stuff. You're like, oh, wow. Okay. I did this. I survived it. And it was great.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you're in it, and we're going through SULE, or small unit leadership exercises. And it's scenarios where you're not going to actually accomplish the task. It's to see how you problem solve and how you're able to lead through a stressful situation. Didn't understand at that point in time, but now I do. And when I eventually got out of boot camp and had to lead Marines, definitely appreciated that period of time and all the things that my drill instructors leaned in on. Again, that 3 feet has stayed with me ever since then and become my motto. But yeah, Crucible was really fun. You're bonding in boot camp, and you get back and you're doing the march back, and then you get to have Warriors breakfast, and you can have as much chow as you want and all the things. And I got to, so 3rd Battalion and Kilo Company, we didn't have an ice machine. They turned our ice machines off in the chow hall. So I had warm water for 13 weeks. And we could only have Powerade if we did really well, either in drill or after the platoon did something really good. So getting to drink Powerade and have ice and water during Warriors breakfast was like really, it was such a great feeling to have.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now at this stage, you get your EGA, you get to call home, right?
Yep. So we had family day. I had written a letter and let my parents know when family day was, and if anyone wanted to come for graduation. So we had family day. We got our EGAs, and then you're getting ready for graduation, getting ready to leave. And so got a chance to walk around Paris Island for a little bit, and you're at that point, you got it, and you're in your Charlies, and you see other recruits on the base, and they're saying, they're addressing you by rank, and I'm like, I'm not there yet. I got my EGA, and
Gotta get through the graduation.
yeah, I got to get through graduation, and drill instructors are kind of letting the throttle off a little bit. You do your final clean of the squad bay, and that night before graduation, we asked one of the drill instructors if he would just take us to the sand pit one more time. He's like, no. He's like, I don't have time for that. I'm like,
Right.
no,
And what were you thinking?
yeah, I mean, we weren't gonna see him anymore, and by that time, our drill instructor allowed us to address him by rank and last name. We didn't have to say drill instructor at that point, but we were also just excited to be graduating that next morning, get ready to leave. We all wanted to go to the sand pit one more time.
Wow, that's dedication and determination right there. So you graduate. I know as a mom, when mine graduated, seeing him for the first time in 13 weeks, and it was just like a breakdown. How was it for your mom and dad?
I think they were happy to have me. You take your photos and things, and it's not your actual blues, right? It's a cutoff. And so I didn't weigh very much before I went to boot camp. And so they said, your face is slunken in. You look so tiny now. And I'm like, yeah, you PT so much. And
yeah, you do.
I didn't weigh I wasn't so little, or that they put me on double rations to where I had to eat twice every meal. I was just above that, but you're not eating really sugary foods or anything like that. The meals are really basic. And so for them, their biggest thing was, how do you feel? Because you look really small. I was like, I feel good. I'm hype. I graduated. The crucible wasn't far, removed from that. And getting ready to go to North Carolina for combat training. And so I was really, really excited, but they were like, man, we need to feed you.
Yeah, that's definitely, a parent's thing, right? Because my youngest Marine, toothpick, always has been from the day he was born. But yeah, so I think he went in, I mean, he was just over the minimum weight requirement.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. And then I think he got up to like 150 or something like that while he was in.
Okay.
So
yeah, I think I was around I was in the 140s when I got out. I went in at 155. I was in the 140s. I went at the beginning of summer. So I graduated right before July. And so it was getting hot. You got sand fleas, not super bad. They started to get bad. Once you get halfway through phase 2 into phase 3, you're out there in that sun. Hilton Head, the wind, the water, you get a little bit of that breeze, but we're getting to the beginning of the summer there. So heat was getting bad.
Yeah. Yeah. You're fortunate though that, you didn't have to go through the end of summer.
Yes.
Because we were down there October. So my youngest shipped July. And yeah, it was, I was already dying just down there for graduation. It was pretty warm. It was pretty warm. So okay, so you get all of that taken care of, you graduate, and then you get sent off then to North Carolina.
Yep. So go to combat training. So if you're not in infantry, you don't go to SOI. You go to your 2-week combat training, or a couple of weeks of combat training. And so went to combat training. That was really a unique experience. My instructor, because you go from calling everyone, drill instructor or addressing anyone as a drill instructor to now it's by rank, right? So because I had my degree, I graduated as a PFC out of boot camp. And so with that, everyone's looking at you a little bit more like you're supposed to know what's going on. And so your sergeant instructors have more expectations since you outrank mostly everyone in your class. But for combat training, I had to wait in a holding platoon for about a week.
How was that?
Very boring, because you when you're in boot camp and you're in a holding platoon, you're essentially in team week where they have you cleaning up around the base for the most part. When you're in a holding platoon in combat training, it was really you're hanging around the barracks.
Occasionally fire watch.
Yeah, you got fire watch there, and you're going to the chow hall, and that's about it.
So you were only in holding though for about a week?
Yeah, for about a week.
Oh, that's not bad.
I was happy. When you go to schools, you're still worried that you're gonna not hit certain timelines, and so I didn't want to be there for like a month or two longer than I had to be.
I'll tell you, when that happens, y'all get inside your heads.
Yeah,
that's when a lot won out. Is when they gotta sit and wait and do nothing. A lot of fights, a lot of theft. Things like that happen. Did you ever experience fighting? Not that you were fighting anybody or anybody fought with you, but did you see fighting? Did you see theft?
Not really in combat training. Only time we ever really had an issue like that was boot camp. You've got that one recruit who just doesn't do right, and the squad has to pay for it. We had a recruit who. He somehow he impacted his rifle on the range. I was right next to him, and he stuck his barrel in the dirt. And right before he pulled the trigger, the PMI caught him and threw him off the line. And so we all had to pay for that. And then that night, everyone's like screaming and wanting to fight. That was the closest I ever got really to seeing a fight. But yeah, when Marines get bored, we want to fight and we cut up and do all sorts of craziness. So imagine holding for 3-4 weeks, right? Yeah,
just sitting there, and this is when everybody pretty much leaves you alone, right? Yeah. I mean, outside of like fire watch and stuff like that, you're pretty well, left alone and to your own devices, and you're now Marines.
Yep.
Oh.
And you don't know. And again, you go from boot camp where everything's really regimented and you've got someone over your shoulder the whole time to, you've graduated, so you are Marine. The expectation is that you know how to conduct yourself at all times. And so if you're not in the barracks, or fire watch, really you're out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
Until the instructors need you to go do something somewhere.
So you only had to wait a week, which is excellent. And then from there, where did you end up going?
So I was in Echo Company, and we had an instructor who he had been in the infantry, but he had been rotated off from where he was and sent to be an instructor for a while.
Okay.
So, yeah, he never really explained why. We just knew that I guess he had been deployed for too long, and they wanted him to be off the battlefield for a while. And so he gave us a lot of knowledge. He gave us a lot of good knowledge though, but he was really hard on us. It was almost like being back in boot camp with him,
Right.
but
Right.
he held that standard, and I think we all benefited from that. But yeah, I hadn't had to low crawl through the woods that many times like I had to low crawl for him, because sometimes we weren't executing the way he thought we needed to execute.
Right. Right. So, okay. So you went through that. What else did you do from there?
So from there, once we got done with combat training, I found out that, comm school or communication school is in the worst place ever.
Really?
29 Palms.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. I gotcha.
So I don't know if you've ever seen, there's a horror movie out there called The Hills Have Eyes, where you're out in the middle of the desert. 29 Palms is out in the middle of nowhere. It's a fire range, and there is nothing there. And I said, why did God put this place here? It's a small town. Nothing happens out in the town, and it's just the middle of nowhere. Literally it rained once while I was there, and the cloud stopped behind the base. It rained. Cloud moved over the base, no rain, and then rained in front of the base. So that tells you how disparaged we were. Is that no water comes on the base.
Oh my gosh. I think that's crazy. But yes, I know of 29 Palms. How long was your training there?
I forget how long the actual schooling was, but I was there from August until the beginning of October, because my class was really small. So I think I had one of the smallest classes they ever had. It was 8 of us total. So there were 5 of us that had just come out of basic and combat training. We had a corporal who was doing a lap move, and he was coming from Hawaii. And so he was automatically put in charge of the class. And then we had 2 Hungarian special forces who were there just doing communications training.
Wow. So
Firewatch was unpleasant, to say the least, because you only have 5 people actually standing Firewatch.
Yeah. Oh wow, that's crazy. Now, can you tell those people who might not be military savvy what all consists of Firewatch?
So Firewatch, it's usually we think about it at night when everyone's asleep, but it's also during the day. You're just really guarding either a specific area or maybe the barracks. You report to the sergeant of the day, making sure that everyone's, essentially doing what they're supposed to be doing. There are no issues going on in the barracks or whatever area you're standing watch over. You're reporting those things if there is something that's going on. Just keeping track of who's coming and going. So if you're in the barracks, making sure no one's coming into the barracks that shouldn't be there. People that are visiting, making sure they leave when things are supposed to be shutting down and people are supposed to be leaving the barracks area. Or if you're guarding like a specific area, making sure only authorized personnel are coming into that area during that time. And then saying your general orders if someone's going to make you say your general orders, to make sure you know what you're supposed to be doing and taking control over, authorization over.
Excellent. That was not a pop quiz, by the way.
I was hoping not, because I don't remember my general orders, so that would have been really embarrassing. I'd have been offline over here trying to search general orders.
No, not a quiz. Just wanted, to give some clarification, because, a lot of times military veterans will use acronyms. Obviously, it's just how they were trained. So just to clarify for those who don't know what those were. So, okay. And so you graduate from your schooling there in 29 Palms. How'd that go?
It went well. So I forgot to mention. So one of the things that I talked to my recruiter about when I joined was because I had my degree and because I was wanting to do more with the career after. My initial plan was to go through basic, enlisted, because I didn't run well, was not a fast runner. But he said that you want to make use of your degree. So my initial plan was to go to OCS after going through enlisted basic, so that I could be better physically prepared. Because as hard as we think enlisted boot camp is, OCS, or Officers Candidate School, for the Marine Corps, is harder physically. I like to say, having had the opportunity to go through both, enlisted boot camp is harder mentally. OCS is another level physically. I don't know if they still do it, but the British Royal Marines run your PT when I was for the brief period of time I was at OCS, we had British Royal Marines running our physical training. So that
I didn't hear that, but both mine went infantry, so they did the ITB.
Yeah, so it's a whole nother level. You in enlisted boot camp, you build yourself up to running in boots. Most of the time you're in Go Fasters or sneakers. At OCS, you you start out in boots, and so I didn't know, what that would entail, and but yeah, it was there was a vast difference. But yeah, once I graduated from communication school, went back home because I was in the reserves, and so I had to wait until my unit was going to have drill, or our period of training. And so my unit is in Chattanooga, Tennessee, Mike Battery 314.
Nice.
It's an artillery unit. And so I go back home after graduating, come back to the East Coast here, and getting ready for drill, and did not know that I was supposed to show up on a Thursday night for my first, to go through intake and everything. And so they met on Thursday night. My platoon, my section chief, calls me. He's like, "Where are you?" And I said, "Sergeant, I'm at home." He's like, "You're supposed to be here." And I thought I was supposed to be there that Friday, the next day. He says, "No, you're supposed to be here now. We stood up the platoon and you weren't here." And I said, "Oh." He's like, "You better get here by 06 in the morning." And so I had to make a 2.5-hour drive in the middle of the night to get to Chattanooga before it was going to be a field drill for us. So we're going to not be at the headquarters building. We're going to go actually out into the field to shoot artillery. So I'm driving in my Charlies, and then changed over to Alphas. So I put my Alpha coat on, and I check in. Everyone's asleep. And then they're like, "Yeah, just go change into utilities or to your combat uniform." And had to meet everyone after being late by a day. And so that did not impress my section chief.
Yikes. And what was it like then for that training? Was it pretty basic? Was artillery new?
Yeah, so wasn't really ever introduced to artillery. Hadn't thought about. I just knew I was going to be a radio operator, but didn't know what it meant to be a radio operator in an artillery unit. And so I got attached to our Forward Observer team. So Forward Observers, they go out and they scout essentially targets either for observation or for the artillery unit to essentially destroy.
Okay.
And so the sergeant, who is our radio operator with the Forward Observers, he was getting ready to transition out of the Marine Corps. And so they needed someone to take his spot. And I get to the unit, and when I joined the Marine Corps, we were using what was considered next generation in communications training. And so we were like 3 and 4G, and you're thinking you're going to get all these really cool toys, and then you get to the reserves, and they're operating equipment that was used in the first Gulf War, and I'm like, I don't know what this radio is. You know, I'm expecting to have all this really cool GPS equipment and all these satellite radios and all this other stuff, and they're like, no, this is the reserve world. We get everything last. I'm like,
well, the Marine Corps in general gets everything.
Marine Corps in
last.
general, you're gonna
Right?
make do, and you're not gonna have all the fancy stuff first.
Yeah.
I said,
Smallest budget.
smallest budget, we're gonna make do. And so I've got a sergeant who's transitioning out. He only had like 3 months left in, and he's like, well, you got me for 3 months. I hope you learn fast. And I'm like, yeah, all the radios you guys are using, I saw like once in comm school because they said we weren't going to see them. And he's like, oh, well, that's what you got. I was like, okay, well, here we go. And so I pull out my little notebook because as a radio operator, you always want to have something to write with. And so I took a lot of notes. At this point, I was a Lance Corporal, so I graduated comm school with a meritorious promotion to Lance Corporal. So again, that expectation was that you're going to learn fast. You're older than a lot of your peers. You outrank some of them coming into the unit, so there was going to be a little hostility there.
Right.
And then you're taking over for someone who's getting out in 3 months. And so my first drill, because I got there late, I didn't get all of my cold weather gear issued to me right because we were leaving at 06 in the morning. So I had to spend half the weekend freezing because I got in there late. But it was eye-opening for me, just having to learn what an artillery unit does. You know, in the infantry, they walk everywhere. In artillery, you're driving or riding everywhere you go. And so learning, you know, what a howitzer was, you know, a 19 or 8, and having to hook up radios and communication equipment for all of that was was fun. I got to see a lot of cool stuff, just how to hook up a radio and be in a little small building and calling for fire while trying to remain hidden. It was really cool to get to start doing. I didn't know that I was gonna be able to start doing some of the cool things I saw in the movies.
Nice. A little bit closer to James Bond, right?
Yeah, a little bit closer there.
So, all right. And then you go through drill. At what point then do you end up getting deployed?
So this was the end of 2006, going into 2007. Buddy of mine, he had also already graduated college. That summer, he says, you know, we should go be officers. I was like, dude, I'm just now, you know, not starting to be hated in the unit because I'm from Atlanta. I'm already older than most of the guys here. And I was like, I heard OCS is super hard, man. I'm like, I'm already not really fast. And I had told my recruiter that I didn't want to go that route anymore. Just because I was so tired when I got done with comm school.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't want to go back to another school. That I was like, boot camp was 13 weeks. OCS is 10 weeks. I don't know if I have it in me. Like, I'm ready to just do, I was on a 6x2. So my contract, 8 years, 6 of active service, 2 years in the inactive reserve. I was like, I'm going to do my 6 and I'm done. And he's like, no. He's like, we'll go on the buddy program. I was like, no, that's that stuff they tell you just to get you to sign the contract. I was like, I don't want to do all that. But he broke me down. And so ended up going to see an OSO, officer selection officer. Got admitted or accepted to go to OCS and shipped off to Quantico. At in
Nice.
September. So
Big difference from 29 Palms.
big difference just in terms of the whole experience. I so went to Quantico. Yeah, learned that, after your first 3 weeks there it's voluntary. So if after that first 3 weeks, if you want to voluntarily leave, they'll allow you to separate, with no penalty. And so after the first 3 weeks, got into a groove, and there it's really different because it's peer review as well as your instructor review. In terms of so when you're at OCS, you're filling different billets, right? And so you're going to be either like a platoon leader or squad leader. You might fill the role of a platoon sergeant. You might be your company commander or candidate company commander as a billet. And so you're running everything for the company, and you're getting evaluated all the time. And so that was really different because when you go and you're already enlisted, they call you're colloquially called a Mustang, since you're prior enlisted there. And so you get a little bit of street cred from people that are just coming straight into OCS, as you're supposed to already know everything. And so I made it all the way to week 7, but I started to have some issues with stress fractures in my hips.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and so wasn't able to run quite as much. So in enlisted boot camp, again, you're alternating between your runs with sneakers and boots. When you're at Quantico, you're in boots, and so you can buy. I bought a pair of Bates Lights, or it's a lightweight boot that feels the same, about the same weight as a sneaker. But you run in those, makes it easier to run in the hills at Quantico. We got to week 7, and one thing you don't want to do is you get pulled into one of your reviews and says that you're not being a good leader. And so Marine Corps, we always want to lead from the front. And I saw that I wasn't just keeping up with runs. And so I was up for review. And you go before like your company commander, you go before the commander of OCS, and they sit you down, and it's almost like a hearing. You got people sitting along the walls. You got your sergeant instructors, because at OCS it's staff NCOs that lead you through all of the training there. And so I had my senior staff instructor there, as well as 2 other staff sergeants, or I had it was a gunnery sergeant and 2 staff sergeants. And they're there, and they've got like your folder and everything. And, the commander of OCS, he asked me, is there anything I wanted to say? And I said, sir, I want to lead from the front. I know right now I'm a physical liability, I feel like, because I can't keep up with the runs. So I said, my unit's supposed to be deploying here to go to Iraq. They're going to start the workup in December. And this was towards the end of November when we were having this conversation. I said, sir, if you're gonna have me leave, I understand that. But I just ask that you let me leave now so I can go join my unit and get ready to go to Iraq. And so he's like, that we can do that. He's like, we'll write the paperwork up, but we'll give you the option, after your deployment, if you feel like you're ready physically, still there mentally, you can come back. I was like, yes, sir. I was like, that, I'm good with that, sir. So they sent me home. From there, I called my section chief, and he was pretty shocked. He was like, sir? I'm like, no, Sergeant, I'm still Lance Corporal Hill. I'm coming home. He's like, what happened? I was like, I got hurt, but they're letting me come home so I can join you guys for the deployment. And so I ended up having 5 days to get all of my stuff situated before we left Chattanooga to go to up to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for our initial workup, where we just did like some shooting artillery wise. We did our rifle quals there. Rifle qualling at Paris Island at the beginning of summer, and then rifle qualling in Kentucky in the middle of December. very different experiences. It was so cold. You don't generally touch your barrel when you're firing your weapon, but I had to then to keep my fingers from not falling off. But yeah, we did our initial part of the workup at Fort Campbell. Then we moved out to the West Coast, out to Pendleton, to do a lot of the other training. And then we did some additional training at 29 Palms, just for desert acclimatization, and for the last part of our workup.
Okay. And then what happened after that once you got through all of the workup?
So once we got through the workup, we were getting ready to leave in April. And that feeling I had way back in college of, am I really ready for this? Is this something that I really wanted to do? I'm gonna just be really, really honest with you. Right the morning we were getting ready to leave, I was in my room. We were in the barracks. I had my own room, and I cried. I was in the shower and tears are just pouring down my face, because so my platoon sergeant was a gunnery sergeant Jones, and he gave us this talk when we were initially getting to work, doing our workup, and he said, because our unit had deployed already, they were part of one of the initial units that went over into Fallujah, and they had come back, and this is going to be his second time over, and he said, and I'll never forget this. He said, "I can't promise you that I'll bring all of you back whole, but I promise I will bring everyone here back." And the realization that I might not come back home either one, physically, mentally, or spiritually whole, or let alone come back at all, hit me that morning, and I cried in the shower, because there was no going back.
Right. You're in it at this point.
Yeah. And so I did my little cry in the shower. We go out to the buses. We head to the Air Force Base to load up, get on planes, and we made our trip over. We had to stop, I think, I want to say in Budapest briefly, and then we made our way to Kuwait and then into Iraq.
And you get to Iraq. What was it like stepping off the plane there?
It was a whole nother level of heat. I'd been to 29 Palms towards the end of summer, but you get to Kuwait, so you're in Kuwait, and you're acclimatizing to the heat and things like that. But you're on an Army base, or Air Force base, sorry, at that point, and you're just kind of sitting around, right? You're not really doing anything at that point. But when we actually made it in country, we went as Provisional Rifle Company. And so where we were going, we're out in Anbar province, so near Syria, the Syria side of things, or close to Syria in Iraq. And so the combat outpost we were going to be at, we were originally, the Army had been there. They cleared it. And we're getting, I guess some things were, from what my understanding, things weren't really holding up the way they command wanted. And so they were bringing Marines back in. And so we were taking back over. And yeah, you hear all that and you get your intel brief, and, they tell you, all right, so you don't have to worry as much about direct fire and things like that, but you've got a lot of intel that's coming in that suicide vests are like the thing now. IEDs are things, so convoys are getting hit all the time. You're getting information that, don't get near the kids, right? At that point, we're wanting to make sure we're winning the hearts and minds of the Iraqi people. And so, it was, you give candy to try to endear yourself or just show you're not threatening. But we were told, we don't want you doing that anymore, because they're starting to use kids at that point. And so you hear that, and it's like, oh, what, right? And
That had
that's
to be difficult, right? To wrap
yeah,
your head around.
yeah. You don't know who to trust, right? For just me as a person, I always want to see another person as a human being, and you're having to make sure you keep everyone at a distance. And so when we got in country, we got on helicopters, took us to our outpost, and we had our unit split into three. So each platoon had a different area that we were covering. And so I got pulled out of my platoon to stay back with the headquarters unit on the main part of the combat outpost that we had. And I ran communications as one of the radio operators for our headquarters element. But just one, you're going from your back stateside and you can shower whenever you want to and eat wherever you want to, or, watch TV or do all these things. And now you're in country and you're doing like water bottles all the time. And so that
MREs, did you get to eat local food?
We didn't get to eat local food. We had our CO, our commanding officer. He would go out and he would meet with the local tribe leaders and council there, and so his team got to eat local food. We had a makeshift kitchen on our little outpost, and so we had a lot of microwave food.
Some say
Also
that could
MREs.
be. Yeah. MREs are, I know my kids like them.
I'm all about chili mac. I'm about some chili mac.
Yeah. There's and it's interesting how everybody has a different favorite when it comes to those MREs.
I'll
And
say
you
the
trade
cold
it,
weather
right?
ones are horrible.
That's so funny. Okay. So here you are now, and you're, overseas. You're just getting yourself situated. Is it anything that does it become just habit, or are you still going, I don't know what's happening?
Yeah, I think about my second week in country, you start to develop your routine. I was doing like 12-hour shifts, so you do 12 on, 12 off for just rotations in the COC, the Combat Ops Center, and then you go back to we had like a little makeshift huts. So you go back, you watch a lot of pirated movies, and so I got to see all the Marvel movies on bootleg DVDs.
I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I had a healthy stack of bootleg movies that you get from the kids selling stuff. So I will say we were close to a base called Korean Village, and so we got our outposts got resupplied every Sunday, and then we had key leader meetings during the week that our CO had to attend, or we would convoy out to Korean Village, and so Army base, you had better facilities, better lunch, and definitely you get to actually eat a hot meal there. But yeah, you start to get in your routine, and then for me, I think it was about around our 5th week there, we had an incident where that norm that you start to build disrupted that. And so we had a woman who was trying to get into the local council building. They wouldn't let her in. They sent her away. There was a kid who happened to just be playing nearby. She tried to pull him with her, and guard wouldn't let her in the building. We had a team. One of our platoons was stationed in the local police building, which is kind of like a little fort. Since the French had colonized the area a long time ago, but they were in the city, and they were there, and they wouldn't let this woman into the building, whatnot. So she sends the kid away, and I had just woken up for the day, and I had my buddy who was in the COC on Radio Watch. He was like, "Hey man, I want to go work out. Would you mind like taking my first hour of my watch?" He was like, "I'll pay you back." I was like, yeah, I'll do it." And so right when I sit in the chair, and I'm like, we called the Eye of Sauron. So for any Lord of the Rings people, we had a camera that we could see the city. And so I sit down, I'm like checking the logs, I'm like doing my radio checks, and I see smoke coming out of the middle of the city. And then we get a call over the radio. The lady had, she had a suicide vest on, and had taken out a couple of people. And so that was my first, like, oh, this is real now. And so you start getting all the radio traffic come in, and I had a staff sergeant who was, sitting there with me, and he's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, he's like, "Staff sergeant, I'm going to call, like, I'm seeing smoke on the screen there. I don't know what's going on right now. But something bad has happened." And then we had one of our squads call in from the city. He's like, "Hey, lady just blew up her vest right across the street from us. We're setting security." Staff sergeant's like, "All right, you got this, Hill. You lock in." CO comes in. Our XO executive officer also walks in. They're looking for situation reps. So I'm having to like communicate back and forth with our squad that was in the city. COs asking for, updates, asking, are any Marines hurt? Was a priority. Yeah. And so no Marines were hurt in that incident. But we're trying to ascertain, one, was it just her? Do we have other things that are going on? Is this the start of something else that's about to happen in the city? And so that was a really eye-opening, really jarring experience for me. What seemed like minutes had been a couple hours. I'd been in the chair just
I wondered, because I was going to ask, because that 1 hour that your buddy wanted you to take for him turned into a couple hours.
Yeah, it turned into a couple hours, and he shows up. We had like a little makeshift gym on our outpost. He tries to walk in, and like the CO and everyone's like sending people away. And so we're setting up QRF for the squad that's already in the city. They're providing they're setting up a perimeter to make sure no one gets in or out before they go into the building. And so we did that. We get the site secure. We ascertained that there are a few casualties, and so they're gonna bring the hospital they had in the city wasn't the best. It was the best for the area, but by U.S. standards, not probably what you would even see in like an urgent care here in the States. And so they're going to have to bring a couple of the casualties onto the outpost for our medical officer. We had a Navy officer who was there, who was leading our medical facility on the outpost. And so they take a 7-ton, which is like a really big truck out. They pick up the casualties. They're bringing them on the outpost. I turn over the communication duties to my buddy. He's sitting down in the chair. And I remember oddly, we were going to have chicken Alfredo. And so I head to the little makeshift kitchen we had. I was like, yes, I'm going to have some chicken Alfredo. It's my buddy. He had set some aside for me, a big plate. And then they're like, hey, we need 5 guys to provide security while they bring these people on the outpost. I was like, no. And so I got pulled for that. I was like, man, I've just got out the chair. I've been on the radio for about 2.5 hours straight. I'm hungry. So I had my rifle already on me. So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll go to this. And so we're setting up security outside of medical. And they're like, hey, we need one more person inside. And I happen to be standing closest to the door So they were like,
Yanked you in.
yeah, they yanked me in, and one of our sergeants, he was our motor T sergeant, but he was running security at that time. He's like, hey, give me your weapon. They need you to help. There's a kid over here. We're going to help triage him. And he couldn't have been more than, I want to say like 7, maybe 8, and speaks no English. And he's, they're cutting his clothes off, and we could see he's covered in blood. They roll him over. He's got shards of glass just all up and down his back. And so, he's scared, and I'm trying to, we had one interpreter in there with us, and I'm trying to get the interpreter to, help calm him down. And so we realized that he was too bad to keep there. And so we called a medevac, and we were going to have to medevac about 4 people off the outpost to try to get him to Baghdad as soon as possible. We had one person so we triaged the kid, and we had 2 other people outside that were stable enough for us to get them in the medevac. We had one person that we were going to have to do emergency surgery on. And so I go from the kid to the person we're about to do surgery. And really odd thing for me to, I thought in the moment, I don't have gloves. I was like, I'm touching someone. I've got blood all over me at this point. Like, I want some gloves. And it was really a surreal thing in that moment for me to think about. But yeah, I'm like, all right, I don't have gloves. And the Navy officer that was getting ready to do the surgery, he's like, all right, I want you to do air. And so they give me this thing, and I'm like squeezing to try to help him to breathe, the guy to breathe. And I'm like, his chest isn't moving, right? So he's not getting any air. And so the officer said, we're going to have to do a tracheotomy. And this is stuff like I'd only ever seen on, for people that are old enough to remember, ER or some other medical show. And so he's making the incision right here, and they're putting the tube in, and then the guy leans over, and he vomits all over me. So I'm like, this is gross, and now I'm covered in blood and vomit. But he's breathing, and so I go back to doing the bag, and then his heart stops, and I'm like, I can't believe this is going on right now. That I went from being on the radio to thinking I'm going to eat some chicken Alfredo to now I'm in here and we're doing surgery on a guy. And so his heart stops, and we had the little the AED device, so we're going to shock him, and they hand it to me, and I'm like, why? We have corpsmen. We had 4 corpsmen in the room, and I'm like, out of the 4 corpsmen, you hand this device to the one Marine over here? And I'm just, I'm like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, we're going to put the electrodes on him. You're going to press the button. It's going to tell you everything you need to do. And so I do just like you would see in a medical show. You say charging, it charges, you tell everyone clear, everyone takes their hands off, and it shocks the guy. And, we did that a couple of times, and unfortunately he did not survive. And so you go through that. And that was the first person I ever witnessed, die in a combat situation. And so that stayed with me for a really long time. And I went from, being on the radio felt like a few minutes and it had been an hour to being in a situation trying to save someone's life felt like hours had only been a few minutes that we had gone through, and losing that person. Never found out his name, but
and that was just a passerby, just somebody who happened.
Yeah, he had just been standing there. Had been standing there minding his own business, and just was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and lost his life that day. And My platoon sergeant pulled me aside and said, if you ever need to talk, I'm here for you. And couldn't call home and tell anyone about it. And so, we're cleaning up, and we're on an outpost, so you don't have access to laundry readily available. So I had to take my utilities off, and I'm washing them in like a box. We had some laundry detergent, so I'm washing my utilities in a box, and I'm like getting the blood off. And just had a lot of NCOs who pulled me aside and just, were ready to talk to me if I wanted to talk. And I told them, I was like, I appreciate it. Right now, it seems really surreal.
Yeah.
I don't know what to feel other than I'm glad it's not someone I actually know, and felt bad about that for a really long time. That I never knew that guy's name, and that his family wasn't going to ever see him again alive. And so, I carried that around for a couple of weeks. Eventually called home, talked to my mentor, and let him know. And he had, him being a Vietnam veteran, he understood. And he said, Terry, you go through this experience, and he's like, your brothers over there are there with you. They're going to know. But whenever you get home and you try to share that story, no matter how vivid you are or how detailed you are in the story, your family's never going to understand. No one's going to ever understand. And I didn't get that until I got home, and I tried to have a conversation with people back home. And it's like, man, that, all they can say is that sucks. And the gravity of that never hits anyone who hasn't been through it. So.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. And, it's really, it does something to you mentally, right? I mean, one, you kind of feel guilty, and I'm assuming in your position that you being a part of trying to save him were not able to. So you've got that guilt. And so that's playing in your head mentally. And, then it's the thoughts of what could we have done different? And, just that kind of mental blame game kind of thing happening. So.
Yeah. And it wasn't until much later that I started to let go of that it's, there wasn't really anything else. We did our best, and had to learn to accept that. Yeah. And unfortunately that wasn't the last person I would see die during my deployment. And so we had other people with suicide vests. We had someone that blew themselves up near what we would consider like the trash yard or trash heap. We had some brothers that were carrying some bombs through the local market, and it just happened to go off in the middle of the market. And so we dealt with that. And we had another guy who tried to jump the wall of the police station, and his vest went off as he was, scaling the wall. And so saw a lot of suicide vests go off, and you've only got your brothers there, and the rest of the world is going on. And
and they have no idea what's going on where you're at.
Didn't understand that until I got home, and whatever, I can't remember what the popular song was before I left for Iraq. And you get home and everyone's listening to something different. And you're like, oh man, is this song still like cool? And you're like, oh man, that was like a year ago. And so you're trying to you go through the deployment. So I'm halfway through my deployment, and I've seen people die, and it unfortunately becomes normal in some regards, where you see things that you're never going to unsee. You're just having to deal with it in the moments, and it becomes part of your norm. You're eating microwave food. You're using a water bottle to shower. You're going in a porta john or in a bag for the bathroom. It's always hot. And, you're we had satellites, so we had TV there, and
Oh,
you
good. Okay.
yeah, you're watching baseball at weird times because of the difference, and you call home and it's like you're back, and you don't realize that they're routing your calls through different phone services. And so my parents thought for the first couple of months I was in New York, and they're like, "We thought you were overseas," and I'm like, "Oh no, it's routing my call. We can't say where we are." And so having to remember, it's 1 a.m. where you are, and it's middle of the afternoon or night where they are. And so trying to coordinate with family, and they want to know how you're doing, and you can't really say, and people are sending you stuff, and it's like, what can we send you? And I'm like, socks, send me socks. Or, when I first got there, we could all wear flight suits. And so that was cool because you keep it really breezy underneath. And
right. Yeah.
And then they changed the order, and we all had to switch over back into utilities, which was a bummer. I enjoyed my flight suit. I wish I could have kept it. But so like that's your norm, right? And you're out in the middle of nowhere, and you see the desert all around you, and there's the one little city off to the side that you guys are kind of bermed off. We had set up berms around the city to prevent people from getting in and out that weren't designated. But that becomes your norm, and then you're getting towards the end of the deployment. And so we had another unit that was going to take over for us. And so you're doing what's called left seat, right seat, where, their leadership comes in ahead of the main unit to get leadership spun up on, who's who in the area, what's the lay of the land. And then you're starting to prepare to go back home. And I got tasked, and my buddy, my sergeant my section chief at the time, he's a sergeant. He's a sergeant major now. We joke about it. And I said, "Man, why did you always volunteer me to like do all the extra stuff?" So I got tasked with doing our left behind. And so we were going to be the ones that after the unit left, we were going to stay behind and make sure the incoming unit had everything they needed before we completely transitioned everything over to them. And so I got tasked with that. And I said, "Man, I thought we were good at this point. I showed up late that one time, and it was, we still joke about it to today." I was like, "Man, I got stories." It was like, "You're a sergeant major. I got stories for your Marines now."
Right.
I always joke. One day we were having to SL3 complete, so make sure an antenna set that we use had all of its components, make sure it was clean. And he told us, he was like, "Make sure you got water with you." And I always joke, I was like, "You didn't even give me water to do that task." I was like, I'm gonna tell you, Marines, you made me stand out in the middle of the Iraq desert.
No water.
Without water, cleaning antennas. He's like, "Don't do that." I was like, "Yeah."
I had to spit on it.
Yeah. I was like, I was out there cleaning antennas and diffusing lithium batteries, sucking in, all the dust and gas. It was like, you were horrible.
That's funny. So your buddy, buddy now, he's still in?
Yeah, he's still in. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
So he made a career of it. But yeah, we joke every time I see him. I was like, "Yeah, I remember back then." I was like, "That sergeant, I got some stories. We can't do all the things that we did back then." We during our workup before we went to Iraq, we were bending the antennas. We weren't setting them up correctly, and he got really mad, and him and our other sergeants in the section took us out behind a building and just PT the hell out of us. It an experience. I was like, man, this is like boot camp all over again.
Right.
And he's like, I guess you guys are gonna fix it, and we did. He's like, because we'll come back out behind this building and we'll keep PTing. I was dripping buckets of sweat that afternoon, but yeah, so we're getting ready to leave, and everyone's like left from my unit, and it's about, I think it was about 7 or 8 of us that had stayed on the left behind, and the other Marine unit, they had pretty much taken over, so there's really not a lot for us to do because they, their command had taken over, and so we're just waiting for a bird to come pick us up. And when you're out there, they will only fly during certain times. If the weather's not good where you are, they're not going to come pick you up. And if it's not an emergency, there's no urgency in coming to get you.
Right.
And so we had stayed back at our outpost so long that the flight home, like the unit had been in Baghdad, they're chilling on the Air Force base, eating the nice food and having what we call mid-rats, where you can go to the chow hall in the middle of the night and get either lunch or breakfast. We're still eating MREs and microwave food. And our actual flight to come back to the States was happening, and we were still at the outpost. And I'm like,
gosh.
Are y'all gonna come get us? And
Did y'all forget about us?
Yeah, I'm thinking, I want to go home now. Like I'm just sitting here watching movies all day at this point, like not even doing Firewatch. Like we're just hanging out. And finally the weather was good enough, supposedly, for us to come get a flight to the Air Force base. And we get there, they had already, so when you're on a military flight, they have to account for like weight, fuel, people, all of that stuff. They had already like put everyone's gear onto the plane to leave to fly to Europe. We're going to do like Europe, then back to the States. We were 45 minutes before that flight took off.
Oh my.
Yeah. If we weren't going to make it, I was going to have to stay another like 3 months before.
Wow.
Yeah, before we could come back home. Our bird lands. They're like, go to the flight line that way now. They put our stuff on a pallet, weighed it, got it on the plane. We just made it. We take off in the middle of the night. And we had a layover in Germany, and then from Germany back here we landed in North Carolina, where you do kind of like you're acclimatized getting back to being on stateside, and so we clean all the gear every day, and so you're just cleaning your weapon every day, and it looks really good, and we're making sure we have all the equipment that we took, making sure everything's complete back there, and then get on the ride. And so we take buses back to Chattanooga to come back home.
Wow. And this whole time, so you were deployed for a total of how long?
We did a 6-month deployment.
6 months. Okay. And now, when you say 6 months, did that include the extra time that you had to stay behind?
So with that time, it was about 7 months. So I had a year. I was on orders for a year, but our actual deployment time in country was just over 6 months.
Okay. All right. So you come back to the States, and how was that for you?
That was different. I at that point, my girlfriend had broken up with me, and so the first thing I did when I got off the bus, and everyone's running and they're picking you up, my parents are there, I was like, I need a cell phone, because I had broken my cell phone on the flight into Iraq, and so I had a cracked screen the entire time. Not that I could use it anyway, but I was like, I need a cell phone, I need a car. And so we had they gave us 5 days of downtime before they wanted us back at the unit. And so parents drove me home. I think I went and got Applebee's. It was like my first meal. And then I went straight to a mall and picked up a cell phone. And then from there, you can set up your pay differently. And I was like, I'm not spending it on anything. And we were at an outpost, so it wasn't like we had a PX or anything anyway, other than like the resupply convoy that would come on Sundays. There's really no reason for me to spend any money. And so I came home with a good chunk of change. And so I bought my first car. I bought a Mitsubishi Lancer. Got me a little sport
Okay. All right.
and so I bought that car. My 5 days was over, and so I went back to the unit. But yeah, that was a pretty it was different. I couldn't sleep when I got back home because you're used to, one, I didn't have my rifle with me, so I'm used to having a rifle right next to me. Used to having my kit, my body armor right next to my rack. And so I slept on a cot for my entire deployment. And having more space, having like an actual room to sleep in was really weird for me. Not hearing gunfire or explosions was really weird. Not riding in the back of an MRAP or a Humvee was really weird. Yeah, so it was a transition, just being in a space where like you're safe.
Right.
But
you don't feel safe because everything's out of your norm, right?
Right. Yeah. So like being what we were like back here, we consider you're in a safe environment felt weird. Like I seeing little kids and so funny. I had a really funny. So when we were at Iraq, they were telling us don't throw candy out to the kids. So we were on a convoy going through the city, and we were going through one of the less developed areas of the city, and our gunner, he had a bag of candy, and we're like, what are you doing, man? He's like, nah, you got to check this out. And so he throws out this candy, and there was no one on the street, no kids, no one. And he throws out this candy, and we end up having to stop. And he was like, oh, I did not know that was going to happen. And so now we're just sitting there, and we see a little kid pops their head out from behind a door, and it was a little girl. And then we see 3 other kids pop their heads out from behind doors, and they run and they grab the candy. And this little girl, she had to be 6, and these boys are probably around 7 or 8. She bodies all 3 of them. Like, she lays all 3 of these dudes out on the ground and takes all the candy and runs back inside. And that was the funniest thing I'd ever seen. I was like, that little girl took out 3 boys way bigger than her and just ran off with that bag of candy. But seeing coming back home and then seeing kids, I was like, man, that little girl could have handled you and you.
Right.
And being comfortable around just people I don't know or kids was different. Yeah, that was a transition also for me.
So, okay. And now are you still, now that you're stateside, but you're still reserve at this time?
Yeah. So on active duty orders, but still reserves, you get, so we had finished our actual deployment about 8 months into the year-long orders. And you get the option if you want to drop off orders and go back into the reserves, or if you want to fulfill the entire year deployment set. And so I was like, I don't have a job. Why not? I'll be back at the reserve center on active duty orders, making active duty money. And so there's not really anything for us to do at that point because no one's going to come in for drill because the unit stood down after the deployment. And so it's like, yeah, you come in, you PT, you help clean gear. We got back right before the ball. And so
I can only imagine how that went.
Yeah, that was fun. So you get to go to the ball and do that, and then
In your dress blues.
in my dress blues, and then I took a nice little trip to Vegas for New Year's and had all the shenanigans and fun there before my orders ended, and then in January of the following year went back into just reserve service.
Okay. And how long was your total in the military, in the Marine Corps?
So I did all 8 years my contract.
8 years. Okay.
So I never, so when you finish your active time, you can go into the inactive reserves where you're just kind of like on the list, and if for whatever reason something happens, they can pull you back into service.
Right.
I went ahead and I did my entire contract without dropping to the inactive reserve.
Nice. Okay. You're preparing to transition back to civilian life. Now, at this stage, you know, you've had an opportunity to be stateside and kind of get your feet back under you, right? But did they provide, and specifically the Marine Corps, did they provide you resources with the best ways or on being able to transition? Like, you know, your MOS, how does that transfer into the civilian world for employment, any of that kind of thing?
In the reserves, it's a little different because you're not fully on service. Like, you're always a Marine, so you're technically considered military all the time, but you're not actively serving until you're on your drill weekends. And so we didn't have those same resources there, because it's like, oh well, you're most of the month you're a civilian anyway. So I didn't have the same level of resources presented to me. I feel like that you get on the active duty side, where you meet with like maybe your monitor, and they have some things that they can do to help transition you out a couple of months before your stop date, and you get ready to transition out. For us, it was like, well, you've got a civilian job already, or the assumptions you got a civilian job, or you're a student the other 3 weeks out of the month anyway. So, you know what transition really kind of looks like on the other side. I would say for me, the biggest thing was I had a lot of veterans in my life already. My mentor.
You did? Okay.
Yeah. I had a few mentors that had already been in service, that had been in Vietnam or in the Gulf War. And so I was able to talk to them about what life was going to look like. But still, you're getting ready to transition out. For me, I said I was going to do my one contract, and I was done. And the closer I got to that, I thought, you know what, I really could do another 3 years. What's 3 more years? So I was going to re-enlist and started to look at that process. But right before I was getting out, I had my oldest child, so my oldest daughter, and wondered what life would be like for her, me not being around.
Right.
And so before I got out, so in the reserves, you do like your what we call annual training, where you go for 2 weeks and you do 2 weeks of training. We had been selected to do like a joint mission or joint training with the Foreign Service overseas, and had gotten permission to not go to that, so I could be there for the birth of my oldest. And at that point, I was the section chief. So I was the radio supervisor, acting radio comm chief on the reserve side. And having my team be able to go overseas was really just some corporals and just a lot of lance corporals, and run communications for an artillery unit, doing some infantry training also with some security forces. Having them go without a sergeant was just, I was so proud of those guys, because that was probably, for a lot of them, that was going to be their only time going overseas, as we were in that drawdown period for Iraq, not really knowing there was no real need for artillery in Afghanistan. But having them go and be really successful and hear officers just remark about how well they conducted themselves. There were no issues with communications that they set up, and they got all, everyone there and back let me know that they would be okay without me. Right. And so I think as leaders, sometimes we want to hold on to things. And so I said, this is probably a good time for me to go ahead and just ride off into the sunset. And I'd also been joking around with like our leadership in the unit that I was like, y'all just keep me around forever. And I'm like, I'm ready to go. I'm done. And so I did my little farewell speech and, left our last training and kept in touch, but I want to say about a month after I was fully out, ready to get back in.
Really?
You miss seeing your guys, and in the reserves, you're kind of apart for a good part of the month anyway, but you're like out of the know. You're not in the loop anymore. Yeah. And so missing being on communications, and you don't they cut off your email and everything, and your CAT card works for a little while until it expires, and so you can still get on base and go to the PX and stuff, but you can't wear like the uniform or the rank and things. And it's like, man, this is boring. I don't like this. So I started to deal with that right after.
Did you end up finding a job, or did you already have a job at that point?
I got a job. I was working as a manager in a restaurant. Okay. And so, just right back kind of where I started, not knowing what I was going to do for my career. And at that point, the federal government was in a hiring freeze. And so I'd applied to a couple of places and had gotten to a point where I was expecting to get on with an agency. I had gone through the hiring process right after the freeze had been lifted, and was preparing to do that. And a friend of mine had a birthday party, and she was kind of left behind, and she was really intoxicated. And I saw two guys trying to take her out of the bar, and I said, we're not doing that. And so got her home safely. And on my way home, I got pulled over for DUI. And so that kind of ended that for my career with the agency that I had just been accepted to. But things happen for a reason. I firmly believe that nothing happens without some higher reasoning there. So was still kind of, I don't know what to do with my career, and you hear veterans that get out start to just be solo, and I started to, drink more, and
was just kind of spiral.
Yeah, I started to spiral, and my oldest, her mother was just not in a good place with her, and started to distance myself from family, and I just had a kind of that DUI was like my wake up call. It was like, hey, you gotta turn this around. So I started to look at trying to get back in the Marine Corps, and that process, trying to get back in as a prior service, is different than just had a not fallen off contract, because now I had the DUI, and you're in a kind of a drawdown area where things that you could have gotten a waiver for before, they're not looking at doing those things anymore. So it was a little harder to get back in. And at one point just had to say, you know what, this just isn't happening. And so had to let go of getting back into the Marine Corps, and finding ways to direct my energies in a positive way. And so wanted to make sure I was the best that I could be for my daughter at the time. And ended up finding a job that I have now. I'm
Nice.
working in IT. Yeah, and so uh, looking for a purpose greater than what I initially thought I was going to be doing with my life. And so, yeah, met my wife. We were at the time we were both working at the same place. We ended up dating, got married. We have 2 children together, so I have 3 all together.
Nice.
And yeah, just learning to be in a good spot. But I think for me, is going back to what transition was like, just having other veterans in my life. I didn't, I applaud the VA for a lot of the people there doing what they're doing, sometimes without a lot of the financial backing that maybe is needed to execute on certain programs. But I wasn't really consistent, so they try to set you up with a counselor and people you can talk to, but it wasn't really synchronizing with me, sitting down and talking to someone. And so for me, I leaned on the veterans that were already in my life and just learning to be vulnerable with them, and then just looking at podcasts. If I'm being really, really honest about it,
That's a good thing.
I started to look at different podcasts just around leadership development and just leaning on like my philosophy minor and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And so that brought me on a different path that's been in an upward trajectory ever since.
Nice. And excuse me. So have you ever been to the VA?
I have.
And how did that work out for you? What were your thoughts about that?
I had a mixed experience with the VA.
Everybody does, right?
Yeah, definitely. You hear things about the long wait times and taking months sometimes to get an appointment. I definitely experienced all of that. But also, I mean, it was really good because I had the healthcare at a time where, you're working for somewhere where if you try to get into the health plan, it's a good chunk of your check. And so I was able to rely on the VA for a lot of my healthcare needs. Had developed really bad back problems after the deployment. And so, I was able to go to in Atlanta to the VA hospital for a lot of those issues. Got my wisdom teeth removed through the VA, so that was good. I didn't have to pay for that. I think for me, though, some of the things I didn't like was a lot of times it was, here's this medicine. And, I don't want to speak ill of anyone, but if I'm able to just get medicine mailed to me, like that can be a problem. And I had some fellow Marines that had that as a problem where you're easily accessible to the medication.
Right.
So that having to deal with, okay, I don't want to rely on medication for one, either the things I'm thinking or how I feel. I don't want that to be my go-to. So that was some of the things I didn't necessarily like.
Yeah, but those are that's really great that you were able to kind of walk through in your head what you will accept and what you won't accept, right?
Yeah.
So, that puts you on a positive trajectory to hitting those goals that you wanted to achieve, I think.
Yeah, it was, like I said, I had to do a lot of self-reflection, and it's like, all right, I'm at this starting point. I've made a really big mistake that cost me, kind of my career in one regard. I'm going in another direction now. I don't want to do something that's going to mess that up also, or put me in a bad state, because now at this point I have a family. And so I don't want to have I don't want my decisions to negatively impact them.
Correct. So, okay. Now you did you end up joining the VFW at all?
I have not. I have not joined the
Haven't.
VFW. No.
Where one of the things that the VFW is good for is camaraderie, of course, but they also are able to listen, just like the veteran role models that and if you have that opportunity, you look into it. And I say that on the part I am a VFW lifetime auxiliary member now. And I was able to join. Of course, my oldest was over in Afghanistan. So that was, and I got to know locally where I'm at. I had a guest on who was, I don't even know, but he was higher up there, commander or whatever of the local VFW. So I got to know a little bit about it, and I think you might enjoy it. And at a minimum, check it out. It can't hurt anything, but it's like-minded people. So something
Yeah, I'm
that
definitely
put in your back pocket.
I've always thought about the VFW, but never actually, had gone. There are a couple of places near me, so yeah, I'll definitely check that out.
Yeah,
I definitely say stay in contact with either other veterans, like you said, or what also helped me was I went back and went to a couple of balls at the unit,
nice.
And now it's like you're in your blues, but no one really knows who you are. So
right.
You can kind of I'll go hang out with you, or I'll go drink with you, and then you got officers that have joined the unit, and they're like, yeah, let me borrow a drink, Sergeant. And I'm like, oh, thank you, sir. Cool.
That's excellent. So are you aware of any resources in your area for veterans outside of the VA?
So at where I work, we have like a veterans group. So we have like a Slack chat that we do. So we provide just a safe space for everyone to be able to talk. There are some other groups in our area, but I haven't really interacted with them that do things for veterans. Okay. But I couldn't necessarily tell you the names off the top of my head.
And that's okay. That's all right. What would you, with your words of wisdom, being there, done that, what would you say to someone interested in joining the military, and not just joining the military in general, but let's say that if they also were to decide to go into the Marine Corps, what words of wisdom does Terry Hill have for that person?
Wow. I've honestly gone back and forth on how I feel about people enjoying the military. When I first got out, I was like, don't do it. Now that I've been out for, a little over 10 years, now I think you have to really understand why you're doing it. Right. A lot of people won't ever see combat, and so your time may just be stateside for however long of a contract you have. So if you're in there kind of just, I want to do the cool things, I want to go shoot guns or blow stuff up or jump out of planes and, do the operator route. It's not TV. Like, your operational tempo is not you go on a cool mission every month. Like, that's just not sustainable. You might be training for a couple of months before you get sent somewhere. So I always like to tell people now, TV is not reality. Even in an action-packed movie, that's a really condensed time frame. So everyday life is not like that, even in an infantry or combat arms unit, I would say find a veteran and talk to them. Not even necessarily one that's deployed, but talk to someone that's not a recruiter.
Yes.
Yeah, and you have really good recruiters that are going to tell you what it is, and not just try to get you to sign on the dotted line. I was fortunate enough to have a recruiter who did that for me, especially going in the Marine Corps. But I would say know really why you're going. If we want to be patriotic, we want to serve our country, but really what you're going to be doing it for is your brother or sister right next to you,
Right.
because it does get boring, and when it does get dangerous, they're all you got,
Yeah.
regardless of what's going on back here in the world. In those moments, they're all you got, and you want to make sure everybody gets home as best you can. So we live in a Call of Duty gaming generation where I think some of those lines get blurred. Sometimes you think I'll respawn or I can get a reset if we get in a tense situation, and that's not how it is. So yeah, my wisdom would be, don't make the decision lightly. You have options. If you want to serve, definitely serve. I'm biased to the Marine Corps, but I'm also very, very selective in who I would want to see as a Marine, because for us, it's a title earned. You're not just a soldier, airman, sailor. Like, Marine is an earned title. And so for us, our community is really tight knit, even after service, and it's really special. And so when if you're on Facebook or whatever, and ball time comes around, you're going to see all the memes and everything about the ball. We are really fanatic about 10 November 1775, and
Yep.
and it's not just a commercial. Like, it's real for us in that
Right.
regard. And so
It's tradition and it's history. It's your
Yeah.
history.
yeah,
And
it's
you're a
really
part of
ingrained.
history, right?
Yeah,
You
it's-
are a part of history.
Yeah, it's really ingrained with us specifically, and every branch has their birthday and when they celebrate things, but for Marines, it's instilled and drilled into you from day one that you are trying to become part of something. Like, you're not just automatically a part of it. You're trying to become part of something that's really special, and that our country has called on to do some of its hardest work in terms of protecting the homeland and fighting wars abroad. And so I would say, if you're wanting to be a Marine, just like it was told to me, it'll be one of the hardest things you ever do. But once you do it and you earn your title, it's for life.
That's right.
And we protect each other and look out for each other always. And so, yeah, I would just, again, reiterate, if you want to join the military, by all means, go talk to people that have been in service first, because what care for you looks like during your service doesn't look the same once you're done. And so, definitely not trying to speak ill of our military, as terms of bureaucracy, but when your time's over, and it's on to the next person. There's another recruit, or there's someone that's going to sign on the dotted line, and then they become the priority. Once you're done with your service, you're transitioned out, and that aftercare isn't as consistent as we may think it might be, or we feel it might be.
Exactly. I think those are great words. If anybody's out there in the chats and has questions or comments for Terry, now is the time. Go ahead and put them out there. I appreciate it.
Ron Wayne had to leave. He's got a podcast as well. And so he left at around 7:30 and he said, "Thank you, sir, for your service." And
Thank you, Ron.
so, and he has been with me since inception on this, supporting this channel. So definitely some great people here that come and watch. And if, for those of you who have not subscribed, go ahead, think about doing so. And then be sure to hit that notification bell, because if you are a veteran, a lot of times our veterans, as Terry did, the stories, being able to find a platform that allows you to tell a story about your time in the military, it is kind of a cathartic thing, right? It kind of helps to get you out of your mind and hear it and take a deep breath, right? And be able to, okay, not just keeping it in your mind and rehashing it again without letting it out. So communicating, about it, talking about it, I think is a big key in any kind of healing, mental wounds, physical wounds, all of the above. I think it really does make a difference. So if there are veterans out there that are interested in coming on the channel and telling your story, please get a hold of me. You can do so at conversationswithavet@gmail.com. And then we can certainly check calendars. I can get a hold of you. Let's see. I think that was the only comment at this point that I had out there. We had a couple. Well, we had, interestingly enough, we had Jason Macaron out who came on, and he's a Marine, and we had met him a couple years ago, actually, and just kind of in passing, if you will. We were in a class together, and so great that he popped on. It was good to hear from him. And it looks like we've had a decent number of people watching and in the chat. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go ahead and get this wrapped up. Terry, if you want to hang tight for me, and
Yeah.
then we can go ahead and get some other, talk about some other things. But again, everybody, I want to thank you all for joining tonight. I really appreciate the support. And again, be sure to hit the thumbs up, comment, and also subscribe. Definitely need the subscribers. When we hit that 500 mark, we've got some giveaways. So we'd love to have that and have you come on for that. Okay. Without further ado, we'll see you again 6 p.m. Central Time this coming Sunday.